Today on the show, we've got a list of 15 items that everyone thinks a church website needs.
The truth is, a bunch of them don't matter at all.
So we'll be putting these items into one of three categories: necessary, nice to have, or nonsense.
And by the end of today's episode, your church will know what your website actually needs and what's there just to waste your time.
Let's dive in. Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Church Tool Show. We're here to help you and your church navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm Brady, your host. I'm joined as always by my co-host. We call him Reverend Randomizer. We also call him Bishop Beehive. It's Alexander Mills.
Hello, hello.
And today it's everyone's favorite game: nonsense, nice to have, or necessary. This is Church Website Edition. We've got 15 items. And Reverend Randomizer is going to load them up into the randomizer, and we're going to discuss each item one by one. Is this a necessary thing on a church's website? Is it a nice-to-have thing? Or is it complete and utter nonsense?
Well, I've got them loaded up into the randomizer. Why don't I go ahead and click randomize? See, how random was that? The first one that was on the list happens to be the first one on the new list. What about web page speed?
Web page speed. Let me just scroll down here and confirm that, yes, that was the first on the list here. So website speed, the first thing that I did was I wanted to kind of like set a baseline for what is a good speed or a bad speed. So what I did was I took the 4 church websites that we manage, or the 4 kind of websites in our universe. So I went and I took prochurchtools.com, and I took socialsermons.com, and then I took nucleus.church, and I took one of the Nucleus makeover churches that we did, and I put them all individually into Pingdom's website speed test. You can find that at tools.pingdom.com. You can paste in your URL and see. It gives you this grade and a score out of 100. So here were the grades that we got. ProChurchTools.com got a 71 grade out of 100 and a 1.72 second load time. That site is hosted on Squarespace. We put in nucleus.church, which got a 90 grade and a 1.07 second load time.
Nice.
That page is hosted on Webflow. We put in socialsermons.com, which got a 70 grade and a 2.01 second load time. Squarespace said again. And then finally, we put in a makeover church. It got an 85 grade and a 1.07 second load time.
Not hosted on Squarespace.
That's hosted on Nucleus. So 3 different website builders. The important thing to understand is that when you put your website into like a speed tool like that and it gives you a grade, that grade and that number score and the variables that Pingdom is calculating to give you that, those are not directly correlated to what Google's using. Like Pingdom's doing its best to say, we think this matters, this thing they mentioned matters once, and they're kind of combining it together, but it's not like a score of 85 versus 90, that makeover church versus Webflow's Nucleus site means that Nucleus.church is better optimized for search and ranking. No, not necessarily. Speed is measured in seconds, which is why I included the load time for each of those 4 sites. So Nucleus.church and the Makeover Church, both by Pingdom's test, loaded at the same speed, 1.07 seconds. So even though Nucleus got a 90 and Nucleus's church website builder itself, the distinction between the marketing side of Nucleus hosted on Webflow and the Makeover Church that actually built their website using the Nucleus website builder, they both load it in identical times. So that's what matters first. The 85 versus 90 is not nearly as consequential.
Okay.
Why is speed so important? Well, if your website loads in 3 seconds instead of 2 times as many people will leave your site without visiting another page. Said differently, 1 extra second in load time equates to twice as high a bounce rate.
So it matters.
And so like when I was trying to think of like how I want to categorize this, I put it down as nice to have, because I do think that there is a barrier where it's like, if it's under 2 seconds, like you're in a pretty good spot. Shaving off these extra seconds, going into the speed test tool, because this is what people typically do, and being like, I'm going to optimize this, and saying that's necessary and it will equate to a better ranking. I wouldn't say so. So if you want to do that, hey, nice to have. But the baseline of, hey, this is a pretty quick loading site, there's no obvious errors, good.
Right, and that's probably embodied in the fact that like our Pro Church Tool site with a 71 grade loading in just under 2 seconds, we're not making any sweeping changes to go to try and improve that load time. That's completely satisfactory, and it's the content on that site that really speaks for itself. I was thinking about how I interact with websites and how the judgments I make based off of slow load times. When it's a quick load time, I'm really not making any judgment whatsoever. It's what I'm expecting in the year of our Lord 2024. When it's slow, my first thought is not this website sucks. It's like, oh, is my Wi-Fi down or something?
That's so true.
So it's like that.
Go to data.
Yeah, exactly. So there's something to that. And most websites, especially the websites we're building for churches with our web building platform Nucleus, are in this like 2-second zone. And that's like, for most websites on the internet nowadays that aren't like trying to load some crazy Flash thing, like you're in that zone usually. Web builders that do a lot of heavy optimization as far as like imagery goes really helps you there. Not trying to load these massive images, but optimizing them for quick load times. Nucleus does a bunch of that as well. So yeah, I agree. Nice to have. And sure, like if you're noticing that your site, whatever web building platform you're using, is taking a while to load, 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds, that's something to look at and like maybe try and make some reformation there to see like, okay, what can we do to optimize this? But if you're in that 2 to 3 second mark, you don't have to sweat it too much.
And I think Alex hit on a really important marker there. And this, I expect to be a common thread throughout this conversation as we rank these different website elements or characteristics. There are the technical benchmarks of like this many seconds, let's say, like ideally under 2 seconds, like reach for that. If it's 1.07 or 1.52, no, I could shave, I don't know if that's worth making sweeping changes. The reason seconds matter is because of what it means for the person. So don't get mistaken by the technical benchmark and not realize what it's representing. What it's representing is someone looking at their site and it just not loading and then being like, you know what, enough, and going away.
Yeah.
That's what we're thinking about here. The person visiting your site, you always want them to feel like they are in control of their experience. When that control is taken from them, when that agency is gone, that's when we start to see problems with websites, because people are like, you know what, enough. Like, I am used to being in control of my destiny on the internet, and if you're gonna kind of like do things that I don't want and force me to sit through it, I'm just not gonna bother.
That is such an interesting point. And I think that's going to come up again later on in this conversation based off one of the ones that we're going to rank. But it reminds me of, we talked about the fragrance that you and my wife Rebecca orchestrated for me to buy. Well, it was bought for me. Now I'm getting ready to repurchase because I've used my tester kit. Now I need to make a buying choice. Anyways, besides the point, I have
an affiliate link, so just
that website, the fragrance house in Iceland, is actually it's the man behind the fragrance house is the guy behind it's Jonesy, the guy behind Sigur Rós, the band. And when you load this website, music starts playing. And that's the feeling you have when you get on a website and something is being done to you that you don't want being done to you. It's like, oh, I don't have control here. And that is not a nice feeling. So the way you articulated that with, you think about music or maybe moving images, that's easy to point out and be like, okay, this is something that's being done to me. But like load time is one of those things. It's like, I'm here to find out what time your service starts, and the site not loading in the right amount of time for me, it does feel kind of like a loss of control.
So think of that, viewer or listener, as we go through each of these items. Don't necessarily get bogged down in a this good, this bad. Think of it in terms of, does this give the viewer, visitor to the site agency? Does it make things more difficult? And we mentioned makeovers, probably worth saying here. We are committed to giving 1,000 churches free website makeovers by the end of 2025. And if you want to be a part of that, there are more than 700 churches already on the waiting list. The response has been, even by my expectations, higher than I expected, truly. You can go to nucleus.church/makeovers. Right now, we are emailing 10 churches per day, inviting them to submit their application from the waiting list. So when you get that email from us, mark hello@nucleus.church in your safe senders list, like right now. I would hate to think of the churches that have been invited, but that email was either blocked by their over-aggressive email client or is in spam. When you get that email, because you prepared for it and it did not end up in spam, respond as quickly as you can. Fill out that application in full. That's the prerequisite for us to get that makeover process in process. Again, 1,000 free church website makeovers by the end of 2025. You can track with us as we go along that journey on the other YouTube channel and the new YouTube series, Pro Church Tools Inc. And join the waiting list, nucleus.church/makeovers.
The response to makeovers has almost been like a bunch of churches colluded to test us at our word. Like, they said 1,000 church website makeovers. Like, let's make sure that we get 1,000 church websites on this waiting list to see if they can pull it off. So we feel the pressure. Thanks for that. Next, next church website design trend that we're going to rank. Just to review that last one, website speed, we called nice to have. This next one, Brady, what do you think? Live stream primary call to actions.
This is utter nonsense. So I go to church websites and you got this prime real estate. I want you to think of the hero section of your homepage as prime real estate. It's the most important part of the site. 80% of people will visit that and virtually nothing else. And so when churches take that space, it's so valuable. And you can probably put in 1 or 2 calls to action. Sometimes I see 3 and I'm like, oh, that's kind of strange. Like that's like it should be 1 or 2. And you dedicate one of them to like watch the live stream, knowing that the live stream is only accessible for like 3% of the week's hours of when someone could be visiting that site. To me, that's a huge waste of that valuable real estate. So simply swapping it for like watch latest sermon is a great idea. If you care about promoting the live stream, I get it. This is the alternative we would recommend. What we do when we create a makeover for a church, when we do their makeover, is we create a banner that auto appears and auto hides itself based on their recurring live streams each week. So, for example, if their live stream each week is at 9 a.m. on a Sunday and it ends at noon on a Sunday, we have it appear from basically 8 a.m. until like 11:30 or 11:59 a.m. And then every Sunday it appears, it's pinned to the top of the homepage and it says, watch the live stream. So you're taking advantage of that prime real estate only when it matters. And then it like auto unpublishes itself and then it recurs week after week after week. This to me is so much more preferable than like the countdown. It's like, the next live stream begins in 6 days or in 3 days and 21 hours. You're like, that's a really interesting way of using the most important part of your site that more people will see and it's not even actionable for them.
Yeah. This is utter nonsense. So I want to talk a little bit more about a couple things you mentioned there that aren't even the live stream call to action. First of all, you mentioned the hero section. Can you describe that to me when you say the hero section on a website? What exactly is that?
Right. So the hero section would be the section of your homepage that is visible when you land on the site without scrolling.
Okay.
So on a phone, on a desktop, whatever that section is that's immediately visible, that's the hero section.
And then you mentioned banners. Now, not every website platform has this functionality, so there's possibly people listening who are like, okay, I think I understand what a banner could be, but I'm not exactly sure. Can you describe a little bit more? You said it's pinned to the top of the hero section there. What is a banner and what can they look like?
So if the hero section is what you see when you land on a site, on the homepage for the very first time, a banner would appear at the very top of that, and there are floating banners that are like at the top, and as you scroll, the banner just kind of sticks in the same spot. And then there are kind of like these ribbon banners that almost appear above the hero section. So if you think about like
they knock the whole site down a little bit.
Right, like a thin ribbon that kind of goes at the very top of the site. Typically, they are bright colors to grab folks' attention. Very simple. We, with Nucleus, like to put an emoji in them if it makes sense, a little playful text, and then one call to action button.
So it's got a button right on it.
Yeah, and if you aren't using a site that has this functionality, or if you don't love the way your website builder does it, banners are part of the Nucleus Launcher, which is a free website plugin that we built. It powers the launcher, it powers info cards, and it powers banners. All of those are free, and they work on any website platform. So you can sign up for a free account at nucleus.church, take advantage of all these tools and install them on the website you already have, even if it's not Nucleus. It's kind of our gift to churches, and it allows you to kind of immediately upgrade your site with all these kind of additional features that encourage people to take next steps, because that's what we're emphasizing at Nucleus. We think every church should put a big emphasis on that with their website.
Just your live stream should not be your most primary next step that you're promoting on your church website homepage. That's nonsense. The next one, related, but a little bit different. What about just pop-ups in general on church websites?
So back to our question about agency. So I did a test this morning. Back in the day, pop-ups were a lot more common because they worked. I remember installing them on prochurchtools.com, and a pop-up would come either when you were trying to exit the site or basically like after you were on any page for like 8 seconds.
Yeah.
And it was like, download this free ebook. 72 social media posts for churches that don't suck.
Yeah.
We just need your email. And it converted at an insanely high rate. And we've said this before, marketers ruin everything. And so over time, the efficiency and efficacy of this type of pop-up became lesser and lesser. And now we don't see those very much. They're still around. And when you see them, you're even more offended by them than normal because they are so less common. When they were everywhere, you were like, this is a necessary evil of the internet.
You almost were conditioned to expect it. Be like, when's the pop-up going to come? I know it's coming.
And guess what? We are still expecting pop-ups to come, but it's a new demon. And now it is allow, accept,
Oh, jeez.
or deny any and all cookies.
Yeah.
Here's how much I hate pop-ups. Okay? Go to cookiechecker.com or whatever version you want and put in nucleus.church and see how many cookies we run on nucleus.church. 0 cookies. I got no analytics. I got no retrackers, no pixels, no retargeting. I got nothing.
Just so we don't hit them with the pop-up.
I hate, yeah. We were working with our Webflow agency. They're like, all right, where do you want to install Google Analytics? I was like, nope. And they're like, what do you mean, nope? And I was like, I don't want cookies. And this was a British agency. They're like, but GDPR. And I was like, if there's no cookies, I don't need the pop-up. They're like,
Exactly.
this man, he's different. It's like, how are you going to retarget, sir? I'd rather no one sign up for this company. I will give away 1,000 free makeovers before I run a retargeting ad. I won't do it.
There you go.
Pop-ups are utter nonsense.
Yeah.
And if your church is still doing that in 2024 in whatever way, now I'm not saying you shouldn't have cookie pop-ups if you run cookies.
Sure.
Like not every site of ours has 0 cookies, but nucleus.church does because I was like, I ain't doing it. Won't do it.
So people use pop-ups. I feel targeted because I'm using a pop-up on my personal website to get folks to download a free coffee brewing guide.
In 2024!
It still converts outrageously. But
see, this is like when we're like, we want enough of these remakes. We want original movies. And then an original movie comes out. We're like, what, did you see that? No, I ain't going to see that.
Yeah.
Did you see Despicable Me 4 though? It's like, okay, like we're the problem. These
Yes.
studios are like, these people say they want original movies, but every time we make a Minions movie, they're like, Minions!
exactly. I should probably turn that pop-up off.
I mean, maybe
but it's still
not.
working. I know. But for churches, I'm trying to think. Okay, during the Advent season, I wrote this devotional for our church. We use our website for every single next step. So I said, if you want to download the devotional, go to our website. Now, as I use this example, I'm realizing I'm about to answer my own question, but I'll keep going anyways. Previously, in another world, in 2008, maybe we would have like made a pop-up there to download the Advent devotional. I used a banner, actually, because we built our website using Nucleus. So I used a banner, and there was a download link there. If your website functionality doesn't have banners, but you have something that you want people to sign up for or take their next step, whatever, what's the alternative to a pop-up?
So a pop-up, what makes it so frustrating and aggravating is that it removes your agency.
Again.
Okay? I am forced to look at this thing. You are shoving it in my face. A banner does not remove a visitor's agency. It's displayed in a prominent position, but it does not distract or overlap, take away.
It doesn't stop you from leaving the website.
Oh my gosh.
No, before you go, 10% off.
Oh my God, so why would I ever pay full price? This happened. Did I tell you this happened the other day with the sauna?
Yes.
Did I say that on the show?
No.
I was thinking about buying a sauna. Spoiler alert, I bought the sauna.
Because of a pop-up.
Because I put the sauna in my cart.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is a big purchase. It's a few $1,000s. I'm not going to make this purchase today. And then 2 days later, I get a call. Hi, this is your sauna company? I'm like, I don't have a sauna company yet. And they're like, well, you do. Your sauna's in your cart. What do you think about $1,000 off? And I was like, what? So I tell my barber this. He's like, yeah, man, that's the play. You always leave it in the cart. If it's Shopify, they have these triggers. They'll call you. I'm
Totally.
like, what?
Yeah.
Don't pay full
That's like
price.
Galaxy Brain pop-ups.
Exactly.
There you go.
Banners, the launcher, the introductory message from the launcher that like pops out from the launcher, but takes up like 3% of the screen.
Yeah.
Those gently kind of say, hey, if you're interested, could you look over here? But we're not taking away someone's agency. We're just providing them like, hey, here's another option. It's still choose your adventure.
Right.
So long as you're not taking away the agency of the visitor, a banner is great for something that's seasonal, for something that's timely. Again, the launcher pop-out message is also useful for this. So there are ways of doing this that are more elegant that are more respectful to the user and treat them like a human, right? Like the pop-up is the version of you like running up to someone and holding up a flyer and being like 10% off car washes. You're like, okay, like I'm a human here. And we don't necessarily always take that same posture online.
Yeah, we talk a lot about values and guiding principles on this show, and it seems like this is going to be a through line on this episode as we talk about church websites. But beyond this episode, just like as you are engaging with your own church website and making design choices and such, like that's such a great value or principle to let guide your design choices on your church website is how do I maintain my site visitors agency? How do I empower them to make their own choices while also trying to lead them in a certain direction, lead them to take a next step to follow Jesus, lead them to download the Advent devotional or whatever. But how do I maintain their agency? That's going to be a good question to ask as you kind of work through your own church website. This next one is likely to ruffle some feathers depending on how we answer it. But what about a sermon archive?
Sermon archive, I have down as nice to have.
Okay, taking the middle ground.
Nucleus includes an entire sermon engine with its base plan. So Nucleus Web comes with an entire sermon engine. So we have invested considerable resources into creating the tools for churches to host their sermon archive online in a beautiful way. You can organize your sermons by playlists, make a playlist for a series, make a playlist for a topic, make a playlist for a speaker. There's an entire beautiful homepage where you got the featured one up top, audio, video, sermon notes, attach a scripture reference, downloadable attachments, fill in the blank. Like we have invested a ton to make this. I don't think it's necessary for every single church. And the reason for that is because YouTube is also great for archive purposes. Yeah. And I just don't think there's anything wrong with watch latest sermon as a primary call to action at the top of a site, linking to like the YouTube channel. YouTube has become so ubiquitous in culture. Like I wouldn't say link to Vimeo, but if you're linking to the second biggest search engine in the world that's owned by the largest search engine and is the one social platform that is relevant for every single generation, it's like, yeah, that's perfectly fine. And you might get people to subscribe there. Typically the rule has been like never send someone away from your website to another platform. And that has merit. I am not here to disagree with that rule, but there's also merit to connecting with people on these like massive platforms that have massive staying power that people are already very familiar with. I wouldn't want to send them out to a sermon archive that wasn't my site that they don't have any familiarity with.
Right.
But if you send them to YouTube and they're like, oh yeah, of course, like I have an account here.
Sure.
Maybe they subscribe there.
Yeah.
And now they're actually connected to your church at a deeper level. I'm taking my own medicine here. If you go to prochurchtools.com/podcast and you click on the latest image, it takes you to YouTube. It doesn't take you to like a podcast video page hosted on prochurchtools.com.
It used to, and it doesn't
anymore. Used to. And now as YouTube has become that much more ubiquitous and it's relevant with every single generation, like it's this kind of outlier. It's like, yeah, like send them there. Perfectly fine. If you want to do the whole sermon archive thing, again, we've invested considerable resources. It looks beautiful. It's awesome with Nucleus. And so go for it. I just wouldn't want to say like, hey, this is the benchmark. And if you don't reach this, like you're really leaving a lot on the table. I could say, make arguments for both. I could hear it.
What do you think about like years long archives of sermons on church websites? I'll hear that a lot from churches who are switching website builders. Be like, okay, we want to make a change, but we've got 12 years of sermons on our other platform. Like, how do we move all these over? Like, do you think that it's necessary for a church to have decades worth of sermon content on their website? Or do you think like the most recent 6 to 12 months is enough?
So again, I'll take my own medicine here. This is episode 809 of the Pro Church Tools Show.
It's a lot of episodes.
You cannot find 809 episodes on prochurchtools.com.
Right.
They are on the podcast feed. The last year's worth are on YouTube. And the last year's worth are on prochurchtools.com because we built a new site. And there was 500 pages on the previous site. They're not getting a ton of traffic. They exist in the podcast feed. And when we were moving those over, like, we're going to move over 500 pages. I was like, no, like sure, if I could snap my fingers and it would perfectly happen, sure, but that's not realistic. And so that's totally fine.
All right. There you go. See, that you can't argue with that.
Sometimes you got to take a balanced approach.
Yeah. Take a balanced approach to this one. How about a beliefs page? How necessary is that?
It is absolutely necessary.
Okay, nice.
So a beliefs page, one of the most highly trafficked on a church's website. The goal here is to be transparent. as transparent as your church possibly can be based on like what you think the best approach to ministry is. People visit the beliefs page and they want to know like, okay, before I plan a visit to this church, before I really consider investing time, before I dedicate a Sunday to getting the whole family up and out the door and just the discomfort of going to a new place. You don't know anybody and you don't know the rhythms and routines and you push yourself all the way through that just to find out, oh,
Yep.
they believe this, that, you know what, that's just not going to fly.
Yeah.
And so having that information public and available is, again, respecting the humanity and agency of the person on the other side of the page. When it comes to existential matters of life, like faith, it's not a good strategy practice to be like, well, if we don't tell them now, maybe they'll believe it later. It's like, okay, like that's just a way to hurt people's feelings and make people upset with you. And it's, you know what it might do? It might make someone leave a 1-star review on your Google My Business profile. And it's like, was that worth it?
Yeah.
Like that could be tremendously detrimental to future people considering visiting your church because they see that 1-star review and they're like, oh, that's not the type of church that if you set people up for that type of disappointment when they feel like there was a bait and switch or they feel like they were purposely deceived, that can be a lot of problems and it's just not worth it.
Yeah, I think what you said is so important. Be as transparent as you possibly can on your beliefs page. We can't prescribe what that looks like exactly for every church, but like when I think about how now I don't really church shop because I'm a pastor of a church. I'm not looking for another church, but like when we travel, we were just in Montreal, and so I used the Google machine to like try and find what church I was going to go to on the Sunday we were there. And church shopping online is very much like restaurant shopping. Like you're searching for restaurants near me, restaurants in Montreal. And you're looking at their websites to make evaluations. Now we just got back from going out for lunch, and we as a team, and we have 2 folks on our team, one who's celiac and one who is allergic to peanuts. And I don't have any food insensitivities, but we eat with them enough to know that like when we're looking for a new restaurant, first of all, it helps us in the search process. Is like when a restaurant discloses we are a nut-free facility or a grain-free facility, or we have certified gluten-free options. That helps us make a choice like, okay, it's safe for us to go there as a team. And that's no different here. When folks in your community are looking for churches, they're searching churches near me in Louisville, churches near me in wherever, Kansas City. And when they end up landing on your website because, you know, your website is fast and you're showing up near the top of Google, we know from data analytics that one of the most trafficked pages on church websites is the belief page. This is where folks are going to make these evaluations. It's, are you gluten-free or do you have peanuts? Like this is what they're looking for. And regardless of what they're looking for, it's your responsibility as a church to project what your beliefs are so that they can make, again, to the agency thing, like they have the power to make the decision that's best for them. Am I going to belong at this church? Am I going to see myself reflected in the leadership or the theology of this church? Am I going to be comfortable to put my roots down here with my family and not have the rug swept out from underneath for me a year from now when I find out that something wasn't disclosed and now we're kind of in a, between a rock and a hard place? So yeah, obviously a beliefs page is a necessity, but what we're hitting on here is that transparency as much as possible on the beliefs page is also a necessity.
And I think people are listening to this and they're like, oh, this must be about abortion or LGBT stuff. Like, let me give you an example of something that's like completely not that. So I was talking with someone and they said, yeah, I'm having, I'm at this church right now. And I was like, oh, like, you weren't at that church previously? And they were like, no, there was like this thing that happened and I just didn't agree with it. And I was like, oh, like, what was it? Like, well, we used to have a board and the board was the kind of final decision makers. And then the pastor said one day, I now make the decisions. And this person was like, and I wrote the board and I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. And the board was like, well, we don't have any power anymore. And that was like a deal breaker because of like church government and church. Right. So like you're evaluating a church and maybe you came from a church, let's say, that had a pastor who had all the control, which is a very common setup in today's like non-denom church government environment. And you saw like how that was toxic with someone that couldn't be trusted with that type of power. And you're looking for a church that like the pastor presents, here's what I think we should do to the board, but then this voting group gets the final decision. Like that would be important in evaluating your church. That doesn't mean if you're listening to this, you're like, oh no, like we don't have like our church government on our site. maybe it's worth adding, maybe consider it, but like that's an example of like it's not always like these third rail issues.
Right.
It could be, any number of things that
Maybe
people are
infant
evaluating.
baptism or sacraments
Right.
or whatever.
When you were evaluating that church in Montreal, you visited their website and it was in English, correct?
Yes.
And that made you comfortable visiting them in person because you're like, well, I'm not French speaking and I'd prefer to go to an English speaking church while I'm here. Totally. You went to other churches online and their websites were in French.
Yep.
So those were accurate.
Yes.
If you went to one in English and then it was all French,
exactly.
you'd be like, all right. It's like the metaphor or the analogy is great for like if we go to a place and they didn't say they were not free, and then we go and they're like, we chose not to disclose that online. And you get there and they're like, we're not free. But you're here now, aren't you? It's like, yeah, you're right. We're probably going to eat, the three of us, and this guy's not going to. And guess what? That's not going to leave a good taste, pun not intended, in our mouths. In fact, it might mean we're not going to talk well about you to other people when they say, oh, you went there? Like, how was it? And we're not going to go again. So like, was it worth it?
Or in some cases, if it's ambiguous, we'll choose the safe route, which is to not go at all.
At all, precisely.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. The next one is links to social.
Yeah, necessary.
Okay.
Again, we talked about the ubiquity of social and culture. It used to be, these cute little social media sites. And now they're like just as important as websites.
We were with someone in Montreal, one of the guys from Social Sermons, and he said, we were talking about evaluating churches online, and he said the first place he goes from their website, he goes immediately to see if they have Instagram. And if they don't have Instagram, or if they have an Instagram account, he clicks through and it hasn't been recently updated, he moves on. Now, I'm not saying that's a good way or a not good way to evaluate a church. I'm just saying that's what he says he does. That's his behavior in the year 2024.
Right. And it used to be that you would go to a website first. And now it's like you might go to the website first, you might go to the Instagram first. Because on the Instagram, it's seen as a more perhaps accurate portrayal of church life. It's like, hey, this is the grid. Everyone kind of gets the same tools. How are you using those tools?
Well, a lot of church websites aren't built on the back of great imagery, but Instagram just by nature is imagery. So for folks who are shopping, who are church shopping, they want to see what a church looks like, what the space looks like, what the people looks like. And Instagram is just that. It's an image and video now, of course, but like it's an image-based platform. So that's when you really get good insight. If the church website doesn't have great images, that's how you get to see what the church actually looks like.
It's real simple. Just link your social profiles in the footer.
Yeah.
Done.
Easy. What about a 5-star domain name?
Yeah, so I think this is nice to have, but I don't think this is necessary anymore. Now, 3 rules for a good domain name: short, memorable, easy to spell. 4th rule, no acronyms. No acronyms. No acronyms. Okay? If you're going to use an acronym, 3 letters or less. If it has to be 4, 2 of those letters need to be consecutive. So NCAA.
Yes.
That's allowed.
Fine.
Or NBA.
Or I think I own this domain name, lan.church. Life Abundant Niagara. We don't use it, but I think I own
Church? Land.church.
Yeah.
Got it. See, that's the problem with an acronym.
Yeah.
We're talking through right now.
Yeah.
Back in the day, domain names were a lot more important. Case in point, when I bought provideoannouncements.com in like 2010, that site quickly became like the number 1 ranking site in the world for the term video announcements because the domain name had video announcements in it. Nowadays, it's the same way your social handle just doesn't matter as much, right? It's like, I need @Brady Shearer. It's like, yeah, I mean, okay, but like if it's Alexander.Mills, like it's fine. Like those things don't matter as much anymore. The only time it would be necessary is if you are kind of following best practices and your church's website is the shared language for any next step, any promotion. So anytime there's a promotion in service, anytime there's a promotion online, it's, go to firstfarmington.com. Having a great domain name that's short, memorable, and easy to spell.
That's a great one also.
First Farmington, it's farmingtonfirst.com is an outstanding domain name. 10 out of 10, no notes, 5-star domain. So it's not as important as it once was, and it's becoming more and more difficult to obtain 5-star domain names. So I don't want you to be listening and being like, man, I can't get a 5-star domain for my church. Like, we're always going to be behind the 8 ball. No, that's not true. If you can get it, great. If not, do your best. Short, memorable, easy to spell.
Talk to me about area codes in a domain name. What do you think about those?
So those haven't caught on yet, and I still think they're a great idea.
905.church.
No. It's got to be like Central 905.
Okay.
So like my church's name is Central.
Yeah.
We have centralcc.ca.
Yes.
It's all right.
A lot of C's.
It's not terrible. Central CC is fine. When you combine it with .ca, it is a lot.
Yeah.
If it was central905.com. Like, I just think that'd be better.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's available. I'm just saying I think that's better. The reason I like the area code is because it's saying, hey, this is where we serve as a church, and everyone knows it. No one buys domain names because of numbers, because they're not good. It's the same as acronyms, except area codes, because everyone has the same area code.
Yes.
Now, depending on where you serve, you might be like, no, there's 4 area codes where we live. And at that point, it's probably less of a good thing. But if everyone has the same area code where you live, and again, maybe it's not as important anymore because like my area code starts with 587 or is 587.
Your cell phone number is crazy.
Because it's an Edmonton area code, which is on the other side of the country, but it's a cell phone. And I was like, I'm not changing this. This is my number. So maybe it's not as great of a call as it once was, but I'm sticking by this take that I've had for like 5 years now. Like, your church's name, if your church is like Central or Life Church or Hope Church or, First Baptist, First Baptist 784 goes hard. I don't care what you say.
Okay. Speaking of,
and then you can get that handle on every social platform. It's First Baptist 784, wherever you go. No, I'm back on it. Any church that doesn't have an area code in their domain name, you're leaving it on the table. Necessary. Everything else is a secondary necessary to your area code in your handles on social and your domain name.
There we go. Clip it. Speaking of opinions that you've held for 5 years or more, what about sliders on church websites?
Okay, here's the crazy thing. When I was evaluating even including this on the list, I was like, we're not doing sliders anymore.
Oh, no, we're still doing it.
We're doing sliders. Let me get this for you. Okay. So Google proved years ago, I think this is a 12-year-old study now. Now, sometimes studies that are old are like, ooh, is that relevant anymore? That's not the case for this. This is a rule that doesn't go away. Users most prefer websites with low visual complexity. Ultimately, that means a clear focal point. It means good negative space, good white space, easy to navigate with your eyes subconsciously. Sliders, of course, break that rule right away because it's basically this carousel that you're not in control of. A carousel that happens against your will, against your agency. So right away, agency taken away. But there's a lot more that can be said about the damage and frankly, abhorrent nature of sliders.
That's a lot of damage.
When I looked a long time ago on one of the more popular theme sites for WordPress, themeforest.net, 25 of the 30 most popular church website themes had sliders at the top of the homepage. So the hero section was a slider. What does that demonstrate? It demonstrates that churches have a unique affinity for sliders, and it also demonstrates our inability to make choices. Like, what should go at the top of our site?
Everything.
That's right. Because I can't make a decision. So what if we just put all of it? You know what? That'll work. If we show all the things, if we communicate all the things, everyone will take next steps all the time.
How's that working?
No. In fact, the paradox of choice would suggest that the exact opposite is true of what you're saying. A study conducted by Notre Dame University found that sliders have a click-through rate of less than 1%, which is more than 3 times worse the average. Furthermore, of those clicks, 84% of them were on the first slide. So if we want people to do things on our site, and you put up a slider, now all the things will get chosen. No, literally 8.5 out of 10 times, it's just the first thing being chosen.
Right.
What does that suggest? The sliders are useless? Great. Okay, moving forward. And then you're also sabotaging that first thing because it's 3.5 times less likely to be clicked than if it wasn't a slider.
Right, which is crazy. If it was just the still image on itself with the same call to action, it's going to get clicked on 3 times more likely.
Right.
Yeah.
So not only are you not divvying up the actions evenly across the slides, they're all happening on the first one. The choices being made on that first one are 3.5 times less than if the other slides didn't exist. Like, this is catastrophically bad. Yeah. Like, congratulations. Every answer you gave was the wrong one. You've somehow invented a website element that is precisely the worst thing that you could do. And then we collectively as churches decided, this is what a church website's going to be known for.
Yeah.
The theme builders outside of the church industry are like, I don't know, man. Like, every time we build a theme that doesn't have a slider, they don't sell. So let's just put a slider at the top of every single theme. And they were all like, great, run up the bag. And all the churches were like, yeah, we don't have to make choices.
Crazy.
Auto forwarding also causes usability issues. It reduces accessibility. Users often don't have enough time to read what's on a slide before it rotates. And according to Nielsen, it's just plain annoying.
Well, it is. And like usually when folks are using sliders, they are image-based sliders, often with a call to action. We've covered that. But what images do well is draw attention of site visitors because we connect with images of real people, smiling people, more than any other type of content on the internet. And so that first image does its job of like, oh, this is a photo, this has my attention. And then just as you're settling in to evaluate what the image is, you're starting to feel a good feeling. Oh, this church, they look so happy. Boom, it's gone. It's like we're on to something totally different. And that feeling is so undesirable.
Why? Because you have no agency.
Exactly. And then when I try to take my agency back by like trying to navigate back to the thing that I was just honing in my attention on and swiped away, slider controls are notoriously just terrible also.
Hope you like a tiny 1 pixel wide circle.
Yeah. And so then I'm just out of here. I'm like, I'm frustrated and I am leaving this website with, a negative feeling. So sliders, still nonsense. Glad to hear.
If you're thinking, what could we do to accomplish some of the similar things that we want to with a slider? Go to htb.org, which is a church's website, and just look at the video that they have as the full width background of the hero section of their homepage. That would allow you to communicate many different things visually while the text and the calls to action are static. Like, that's a great way of showing a lot of different things. If you're like, I don't know, like, how do we prioritize what thing that goes at the top of this site? We want to show off our whole church. Great. Literally show off the whole church.
Yeah.
All the people of all the ages, of all the ethnicities, in all the buildings, with all the programming, with all of the different worship service elements, and put it into a 10 to 15 second video. It can loop. People can get an instant feel visually, and you can have one headline and 1 or 2 calls to action, and you haven't botched the whole thing.
But Brady, making a video header on my website just sounds too difficult. Well, listener, let me tell you. The quality of video that we're shooting on our iPhones right now, again, in this year of our Lord, is frankly ridiculous.
Do you want to tell them our little secret?
I mean, we're filming more than one part of our vlogs, the Pro Church Tools Inc. Story that we're telling on the main channel. We are filming those on the iPhone. Apple's filming literally everything they do on the iPhone now. Like all of their big Apple events are filming on the iPhone. And so like it's really that hesitation, that excuse used to be a real thing. Like, oh, we don't have the video gear. It's like, yeah, I hear you. But it's just not true anymore. You have it in your pocket, or at least someone has the 15 Pro in their pocket. And so you can pull this off in one weekend. Like you said, show the whole church with this looping video background and accentuate your main calls to action, the next step you want folks to take, because you mentioned the paradox of choice, which is when more choices are presented to folks, they actually end up taking less next steps. It's harder to make a choice when there are more choices. So quit it with the sliders and all the calls to action, show the whole church with a video background, and prioritize 1 to 2 calls to action. Plan your visit, learn more about our church, or plan your visit, watch this greeting from a pastor, and watch your next steps increase. And probably your first-time visits to your church increase as well.
I'll tell you how much I got bamboozled by this the other day. We were working on the color grade of the Pro Church Tools Inc. YouTube series, and we were trying to get in the right universe. And so I was like looking at a bunch of creators that I like and how they color, and I'm watching through one, and I was like, man, even when this creator was shooting inside of a hotel room, and so I was like, oh, like, this looks really good for a hotel room. Typically, the lighting in there sucks. And he's like, oh, over here we have the bathroom and stuff. And there was a full-length mirror. And I saw, from a blink of an eye, it was on screen for 1 nanosecond in like an obscure corner. I was like, wow, what? No. So I scrub it back and I hit pause during like the 3 frames. And I go, my goodness. This man was recording with his iPhone.
Yeah.
And I know he shoots with a Fuji.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, the Fuji was packed in the suitcase and he had just got to the hotel room and he wanted to show it around.
Yeah.
So he pulled out the phone and the iPhone 15 Pro Max and he turned on log and he started shooting. And I was like, I showed our cinematographer, I was like, what is this? And he's like, yeah, they do that now. And I was like, so in a recent episode of the Pro Church Tools Inc. series, episode is called The Worst Camera I've Bought in 5 Years. And there was a part of it where I filmed inside of an arena with the iPhone.
Yeah.
And we shot in log on the 15 Pro Max, and we cut it next to Canon C500 Mark II footage, which is a $25,000 camera in Canadian currency.
Yeah.
We cut it next to Sony A1 footage, which is a $10,000 camera. And I can tell.
Yeah, because you filmed it, but it's indistinguishable.
Right. And I only could tell on this other creator because the mirror gave him away. And I was like, okay, if he can do that, then I can do this. Yeah. And if I can do it, you can do it. If you can do it, we can do it. Everybody, let's get moving.
Exactly. Okay, moving on. What about responsive website design?
Yeah. Okay, so this is necessary.
Obviously.
More than half of the visits to your site are coming from mobile devices, almost certainly. Recent episode of the Pro Church Tools Inc. YouTube series was called Best Church Websites of 2024. And we did the opening chapter of that episode with Mr. Rowley. And Mr. Rowley is our rolling monitor. It's a Samsung Zero television, which is mounted on this little Rowley contraption, and it can orient itself either vertically or horizontally at the click of a button.
It's pretty sweet.
It's pretty sweet. And we were filming a horizontal video, 9:16. 16 by 9, I'm so used to vertical, 16 by 9 for YouTube. So we positioned the monitor also in that same orientation. And a couple of the comments came in and said, why didn't you show these on mobile? Like, isn't responsive design important? And I was like, yeah, like all sites though are responsive nowadays. Like that wasn't even something on the top of my mind. I wanted to include it here to say like, yeah, like definitely your site needs to be optimized for mobile. It needs to be just as, if not more enjoyable, good first impression on mobile as it is on desktop.
So I think that is also to say, without taking it for granted, that like, oh, I can just build, because we build websites on desktop, right? Like we don't really build them on the phone, we build them on desktop. So without taking it for granted, just to build it on desktop and say, oh, this is going to look great on mobile because it is 2024 and just about every website is mobile responsive. I just can't think of anything that's not mobile responsive. It is imperative that you are, as you're designing your church website, you're managing it. It is imperative that you're doing that double check to see how does this display, what is this experience on mobile? Because like you said, at least half of your site visitors are going to be visiting on a mobile device. And so whether that's like which order you're putting text up against images or text up against images to make sure that the flow is correct, because on desktop, maybe they're side by side, but on mobile, they're going to stack vertically. And so you ought to also pay attention as you're actively designing, how is this going to look on mobile, and not just take for granted that whatever website builder you're using is just going to handle it for you.
Right, and it's perfectly reasonable if you have a tough decision to make, this would look better on desktop, this would look better on mobile, to make the decision that will look better on mobile. And it might feel bizarre to make that decision because you've been looking at the site on desktop this entire time because you're designing it on desktop.
Yeah.
And so you have to remind yourself of that. Like, okay, yes, 98% of the time I'm looking at it on a desktop, but more than half of my users will visit on a phone. So if more than half go on a phone, I should make the choice that looks better on a phone because it will serve more of our people. Now, if you look at your analytics, of course, which of I have none. No, we have an analytics that is non-cookie. Check it out. Simpleanalytics.com.
Something like that, yeah.
If you see that that's not true for your site. Oh, no, there's more desktop viewers. Perhaps then it is perfectly reasonable to make the desktop first choice.
There you go. What about app CTAs, calls to action?
App CTAs. So I think Planning Center did a really great thing a little while ago when they introduced the Church Center app. There was a desktop version. So if you're on a church's website and it's like sign up for VBS, you can click that, opens a new tab, and it's the Church Center page. The great thing about the Church Center desktop pages is that they are no frills.
Right.
And that matters because low visual complexity is what matters most in terms of functionality, accessibility, and navigation for visitors to your site. So yeah, they're not the prettiest pages, but like that's the point. They get the job done.
Yes.
They are functional. If you're not using Planning Center, sometimes what happens is you click sign up for VBS and then it says, cool, you just need to download this app. I'm like, well, one, if I'm on a phone, I don't want to download your app. Two, if I'm not on a phone, I'm not on a phone.
I don't have a way to download your app.
This is nonsense. And yet, these app companies convince churches like everything needs to happen in our app. And you're like, yes, in a perfect world where the app is downloaded and notifications are turned on and desktops don't exist, this works really well. We had to kind of confront the same thing when we would say, look, all of your stuff should go through Nucleus. And people were like, look, there are some people in my church that will not use a device. And I was like, okay, so I need to consider hybrid solutions where you push people to use these things, but if someone wants to fill out paper, like they still can. And I was like, okay, great. Like that's dealing with humans. When your website's main call to action or any call to action links people to an app that needs to be downloaded, you are needlessly introducing like 7 hurdles to get through before someone can take the intended next step that they have signaled they want to take. People are like, take my money. I'm wanting to do this thing. Take my behavior. Take my involvement. Take my registration. And you're like, listen, if you want to register for this, if you want to give, you're going to have to do a couple things for us first. It's like, wait a minute. That's completely backwards. Yeah. And yet these churches feel so convinced, like, oh, we're spending all this money on this app. It needs to be all going through here. What are you doing? You're removing people's agency. Guess what that means? Fewer next steps, fewer involvement, more frustration. And then next time you promote something from stage, people are going to remember that interaction and they're going to be less likely to follow through because they're like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to talk to someone that wasn't working. And now the whole thing's falling apart.
We were handling a sermon clip the other day. It was a pastor. And he was mid-sermon, mid-sentence, the guy almost interrupted himself. He goes, please download our app. He was like...
He was exasperated.
Yeah, man. His spirit was crushed. He was pleading with the congregation. He says, please, would you download our app? Because surely he's feeling this, which is he wants people to take next steps in his church, which we all want folks. That's what the whole thing is about.
And when he's in the app, he's like, this works.
Yes.
This app is kind of... okay, this app is doing it.
Yes, yeah. But I don't know about you, but like when I need to take a next step, and it's not just at church, when I need to take a next step on any like online portal that involves filling out like family information, whether it's birth date or if it's a medical form, a health card, or whatever, I will like leave it until I'm sitting in front of my computer to do it.
Yes.
And so folks are, I don't have data to back that up other than just knowing that like that's my experience, and it sounds like you resonate with that. But like that's a pretty safe assumption that folks are like waiting to register for VBS when they get home because they got 4 kids and they need to sit down and type it out and this, that, and the other. And if you hit them with a download the app when they've waited to get to their computer to do the thing,
they might leave the church.
They might leave the church and the faith altogether.
Let's use the restaurant analogy again. When I go to book a reservation and it's like book online, great. When I go and it goes, we actually only take reservations through this app. It's called Reserve Your Seat Slovenia. It's like, I don't have this app. Do the Slovenians all have it? They're like, no, even we don't have this, man. It's like, okay. Like I got 8 apps on my phone that are just for reservations.
Yeah,
like, we don't use
nonsense.
OpenTable. We only use Resi. We don't use Resi. What does Promorset use? We only use
Talk.
We only use Talk.
Yeah.
Oh, is that like TALK? No. Is it TOCK? No. It's like, how do you even spell this? I can't even get it.
No. It's nonsense.
It makes me mad.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something that can't make you mad. It's like pretty pedestrian stuff. Service times, address, and contact info.
Maybe more necessary than anything aside from the area code in your domain name and every handle.
Could be. Because this is what people are looking for when they come to your church website.
The number of times you visit a site and you're like, where is this information?
Yes.
So here is the guaranteed way to not mess this up. This information should be in the footer. Always. If it's in the footer, at the very least, when someone is like, where is this? Where is this? Where is this? And they get to the bottom of the page, they find it. This is why I say the social links should always be there. Like I just scroll to the bottom of a church's site. I'm like, I know their Instagram is going to be linked there.
I did this today. We were talking about lunch, and there's a restaurant down the street called Grist. And you brought it up, I think. And we were talking about how there are restaurants around here that are notoriously closed on Wednesdays, which is the day we do our team lunch.
And you know why we don't like Grist? Because they don't take reservations, and I have no agency.
That's right.
No agency.
But we were talking about Grist, and someone was like, "Are they the ones that are closed on Wednesday?" So I went to their website. Okay, listen to how this happened this morning. It was not above the fold. So in the hero section, their hours were not there. So what did I do? I swiped on my magic mouse.
You do the super swipe
as quick as I could. Got to the footer, nothing. The next thing that came out of my mouth was, imagine having a website this bad. That's what I said out loud. I scrolled back to the top. I'm looking at the nav items. It says like home, menu, about us, and contact. So now I'm just rolling the dice and I'm like, if it's somewhere, it's going to be in contact.
Yeah,
and if I
contact.
click there and it's not there and I have to go back to Google to look at the My Business to see if they're open or closed, I clicked on contact. It was there.
Praise God.
contact, it doesn't make any sense for it to be there. I want to see what your hours are. So put it in the footer and make your footer big and available on every page of your church's website. So your service times, your contact information, and your address, the things that folks are looking for when they're trying to figure out, how do I give you money? How do I come to your church? That information is available on every page of your church's website.
When we do makeovers for churches, we put all this information in every footer. And the reason is that the only place we put it? No. We put it in a bunch of other spots, especially on the homepage. But we put it in the footer so that when we hand over a makeover site to a church and we say, hey, here's your, watch a live class, go join a live class with Alex, book a demo call. Like if you need to learn how to manage the site yourself, great. But the point of a makeover is to do all the heavy lifting for you. But the Nucleus website builder is made for church staff and volunteers. So now you have the power to add new pages and make adjustments to pages. And as soon as I know that they're going to take over, they're going to change something for not the better.
Right.
So if I put all the information in the footer, they're way less likely to make changes to the footer than they are, this hero section. Oh, plan a visit. And when you click that button, it immediately goes to our hours and service times. No. Download app. And I'm like, no. But hey, that's your choice. If I hide it in the footer, it's probably going to be there. Imagine putting the hours and contact us. What's funny is I would have clicked on contact first as well, because the rules of the internet just suggest that it's more likely to be there. Yeah. But it would make more sense in about us. Here's what you need to know about us. We open on Wednesdays.
Yes, they were open today, but we didn't go.
Because they don't take reservations. No agency.
Okay, what about, we've talked about the beliefs page already. We mentioned
How many more are there?
There's a couple more, just a couple. We mentioned the beliefs page. It's one of the most trafficked pages on any church website. What about a staff page?
Yeah, we know this from analytics as well. Very, very trafficked. Mm-hmm. And you know what? If you think about the behavior we talked about, why people visit the beliefs page, it's the same motivator that's bringing people to the staff page. Because they want to know, okay, this is what you believe, but like, that's just words on a page. Who are the people?
Yeah.
Who are the actual people that I'm going to be, looking up to as the leadership of this church? And so I always suggest a couple of things. Like, great photos here are really a must. Unfortunately, often staff photos are some of the worst. And people look like not their best. Mm-hmm. But a smiling photo is so inviting. It's so greeting. It's the same reason people greet at the door, and you want like the bubbly personalities to be greeting at the door, because that is a first impression waiting to happen. And the same is true for the staff page. You know what I want? I want an experience I had recently at a spa. Okay? I went to the About Us page because I was like, who's going to be doing my nails? Because my nail tech was away.
Okay.
And I was like, who is it? And I saw the photo. I was like, now that is an inviting photo.
Okay.
And I saw them in person, and I was like, you do not look like your photo online.
Wow.
That's a much better experience than seeing someone that does not look very good online.
Right.
Because like this was bad lighting and they look a little bit scary. Mm-hmm. If you disagree, you disagree. At the very least, I like to include something playful on the staff pages. So like, Pastor Jim, he loves fishing and 5Ks. It's like, okay, it's a little bit of personality. Yeah. And then about us, like, Pastor Jim studied at this, he got his degree from here. He's been in ministry for this long. He's married to, Stacy. They got 3 kids. Oh, he loves the Celtics. Okay, great. I'm not going to this church then. But that information, it's people want to see that, if someone cares about like women in ministry, they want to see like, do you have women on staff? Like that's important to me. And so putting that stuff up there, it's like, if your church, like we do not ordain women. We do not believe you are a real church if women are not in ministry. Great. If a woman is evaluating your church and they care about that, they should be able to clearly see it. Yeah. And that's better than them going and not being a good fit for your church, right?
Totally. One of the best versions of this I've ever seen feels like a million years ago, so I have no chance of recalling what the church website was. It was clearly like a custom website, like either it was WordPress or like Squarespace, but the developer side, like something. It was an impressive website, and on the church staff photos, they had a hover state. So the staff photo was like a nice, pretty headshot, but then when you hovered over it, it would change to like a goofy headshot. So you could tell that the staff was like instructed to bring in props or like something that was meaningful to them. And so when you hovered over their nice staff photo, this goofy staff photo would come up. The one that I remember was like the guy was decked out all in like Star Wars gear. And that was just like, you mentioned adding something fun, like whether it's a quirky bit to the bio, or an example like this, like a fun staff photo, adding some personality, some life into those photos, that staff area of your church website is a really nice touch.
For our part, again, putting our money where our mouth is, in the Nucleus website builder, in your church settings, there's an entire module dedicated to staff and leaders. And there you can put in names, you can put in photos. We have these big expansive overlay sections when you click on a staff person, and you can get all this information about them. We built it into the site because we know how important this part of a church's website is. And so we don't want you to be like, how am I going to put this on a page? No. The feature is built right into the website builder, fill it in, and now it's operating the way it's meant to. All you need to do is type in some text and upload a photo.
That's right. We got 3 more. The first one is scroll animation. You're going to love the last 2.
Okay.
So scroll animation.
Yeah, so this is really popular. Do you remember parallax?
Unfortunately, I do.
So parallax scrolling 5 years ago was everything. It was it's like a scroll, but it's not.
Yeah, I remember Wix was the first website builder that I used that enabled me to do it. And when I got my hands on that feature, I thought, I've got the power now.
The hot new thing is scroll animation. So if you think about a homepage, let's say it's broken up into 5 sections, okay? One on top of another. So you land on the page, hero section. Okay, great. And you scroll, and as you scroll, it's the text flies in, and the photo does a 360. And some of these, admittedly, look very cool.
Yeah, like apple.com. But anything else?
This is nonsense.
Yeah.
By the way, if we didn't say it, staff, necessary.
Yes.
Necessary.
Yeah.
Scroll animation is nonsense. 9 times out of 10, when it's done poorly. So you won't find really any of it on any of our sites. prochurchtools.com, nucleus.church, socialsermons.com. We have the ability to do these things.
Right.
And Webflow, they do it better than really any other website builder, in my opinion. And I still don't include them because it takes away agency. It's we're going to put a show on for you, but that doesn't align with low visual complexity. If you are a website agency and you're kind of trying to show how great you are, I understand why you would include it. But for a church, it really just almost always creates more problems than it solves. And so I'm if you want to try to thread that needle, go for it. But most churches are going to stab themselves with that needle.
Yeah. Truthfully, apple.com is the only website where I've actually been impressed by these scrolling animations. And that's congruent with the story they're trying to tell me, which is our products are amazing and can enable you to do things you've never done before. And so the scroll animation is congruent with that. It's just phenomenal. It's like a wow factor. But
and guess what? I don't like it there either. Wow. Because sometimes I'm trying to scroll to a certain part of the page, and it's wait, we're going to do our entire presentation for you before you can scroll. I just want to sit down at my table. No. We're going to give you a whole tour first. It's I don't want the tour.
That's true.
And they're you don't get to make the decisions. And I'm and that's the problem.
Yeah, that's fair. I noticed Squarespace is going really heavy with the scroll animations right now. They've Squarespace 7.1, they have all of these features baked in.
No, because it's huge with Webflow and they need to be competitive.
Yeah, and so on my website hosted on Squarespace, the only time I have it enabled is they have a circle animation to highlight a word. And I think that's pretty cool in my context. That's the only scroll animation I have enabled on my site.
Circle animation.
So you're scrolling down, you're reading a paragraph, and a word, instead of gets underlined, it gets circled like a pencil. I
don't call that a scroll animation. To me, that's an emphasis element.
Okay.
I like emphasis elements.
Sure.
Scroll animations to me are the entire section.
Right.
It's
it's being
geometry. It's
constructed.
we put this brick here. It's it's okay, this is world building and Inception. Leonardo's we're gonna put this here and put this here. It's if you circle a word, it's look at this word.
Yes.
To me, that's helping me draw my attention where it needs to go. And I'm not captive. It's not I can't read any other word. It's
right.
We're gonna show you this photo, and then we're gonna show you one arrow to one part of this. It's no, I'll figure it out on my own.
Nonsense.
What
about this one? Photography.
Ooh, photography. Okay, so you know what? Instead of making my case here, I just wanted to share data. So here we go. When a visitor lands on your church's website, it's only 0.05 seconds before a first impression is formed in their mind. That comes from the Journal of Behavior and Information Technology. Researchers from the University of Bradford found that initial trust was boosted on websites that have photos of human faces. Meaning, people come to your site and by default are a little bit skeptical And they probably are, because trust in institutions right now is at like a 50-year low, lower than it's ever been in mine or Alex's lifetime. Churches are included in institutions. Just putting smiling photos of people means that you are going to boost trust immediately.
Wow.
So you're already working to undo some of their skepticism from the jump. University College London found the same thing. Adding happy photos of people to websites with low trust increased perceived trustworthiness. So even if you're starting from like on the back foot, you can undo that. Canadian researchers found that websites with photos of human faces were more positively received by users than websites with photos lacking human faces or websites lacking photos of humans whatsoever. So it's not just photos. It's not just photos of humans. It's photos of smiling humans. That is what is doing the trick. And guess what? That aligns with church, because the church is the people. And the intangible element, the non-commodity thing that the church has to give the world right now, that it is desperately lacking and searching for, is community, hope, purpose, a feeling of being part of something greater than yourself. You're not just looking out for me. That's what the church community is at its best. And so that is the perfect representation of the church in website form. Big photo containers, smiling people in the lobby, in worship, in small groups, in kids ministry, in volunteering. That's the perfect representation of church. It aligns theologically, and it is the most effective thing that you can do. It is necessary.
With one caveat, you cannot cheat this. You cannot hear this data and be like, oh, we don't have photos of smiling people from our church, but I do have the internet. So I can go to Unsplash and search people worshiping, or I can go to Midjourney and say,
diverse group of people worshiping at church.
Because we all have a BS meter online, and especially with the rise of AI and generative content, our BS meter is getting tuned to perceive what is real and what is not. And it's becoming easier to spot stock imagery. And so don't you dare, anyone listening to the show, don't you dare try and cheat these studies and try to build trust with your site visitors by uploading photos of smiling people who do not belong to your church. It will not work.
We went to a new place for lunch today, and we got some tacos. I saw the pictures of the tacos online before I went. If I went and they served me tacos and they're like, here are your tacos. And I said, these don't look like your tacos online. Those weren't our tacos. That was AI generated.
Yeah, that was a taco.
I said, great, you're getting a 1-star review.
Yeah.
Now, to be clear, I would never leave a 1-star review. It's not my type. I don't leave reviews.
You just wouldn't go back.
No, never go back. And I guarantee you, I would badmouth that place to someone that asked me about it, because that would have been the ultimate betrayal of trust.
Yeah. Okay, last one. Photos necessary. Last one. SEO. Search engine optimization.
So we saved like two of the biggest ones for last.
I know.
It's okay, Reverend
Randomizer.
Randomizer.
It's a randomizer.
It's
Yeah.
finally
What can I say?
randomizing.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's there are different types of SEO. 3 easy ones that you can think of. There is a local SEO, there's on-page SEO, and there's technical SEO. Let's go in inverted order for importance. So technical SEO is what we talked about earlier with like page speed. Like, are the images compressed so that they can load well? So that's a part, technical SEO. That's mostly taken care of by your website builder. So you don't need to fuss too much over that. If you want to run the speed test like we mentioned earlier, if you can identify any huge glaring issues, sure. Next is on-page SEO. So this is going to be like in the headline of a page, in its meta description, and then in the actual text that's on the page, using the words church, using your city and or your region, so that when people are looking for church in Louisville, that was put in the headline of your site. When we're doing makeovers for churches, we are conscious of this, and we put that into the copy, into the headlines of the pages, page titles, and meta descriptions, so that when people are searching, that page can be properly indexed. And then there's the final. And it's amazing that this has not been mentioned this entire episode, because it might be the most important thing that your church can do for its online presence, for its website, and it's not even technically your website. And that is your Google My Business listing.
That's right.
I did not go to the taco website for the place that we went to at lunch today.
They don't have one.
Because they have a Google My Business listing.
Exactly.
And it has a ton of 5-star reviews, and that gave me instant trust that it was a good choice to take our entire team and spend, $300 at lunch.
Yeah.
I saw pictures of their photos. Spoiler alert, it was their real tacos.
Yes.
And it wasn't AI generated or stock. It had their hours, it had their address, it had their contact info, and it was all right there.
What else do you need?
Your church needs to claim its Google My Business listing. It needs to be accurate. And every single grade photo that we just discussed, it needs to be in your Google My Business listing. I need to see the outside of your church. I need to see the inside of your church. I need to see your church's vibrant community. I need to see your service programming. It all needs to be there because people are seeing that now just as much as they're seeing your website.
That's right.
They're seeing your Instagram just as much as they're seeing your website. So we do a makeover for a church, great. But then we also need them to complete their Google My Business listing. We also need them to have an active Instagram presence because these things are all playing together. SEO is necessary, but it's a broad term. So I don't want you to think of just like, oh, my code needs to be clean. It's like, yeah, but like in 2024, that local SEO, which is 95%, your Google My Business listing, that's so important.
There you go.
All right. Nonsense, nice to have, necessary. And I don't even think we had to use the
We didn't even hit the nuance.
asterisk nuanced.
Yeah.
It depends once. So praise God for that.
Yes.
And thank you so much for your time, attention, and trust. And we will talk to you next week.
Do not disturb me.
If you even think about disturbing me.
All right. All right.
Pod?
We're rolling all the way around. Lights are looking good. Lights are looking good.
No one listens to this podcast, but thank goodness we get paid well for it.
That's right. That's right. That's how I lay my head to rest.